Hi there, it's Ray, and welcome to my first weekly reading vlog of 2021. It is the 17th today, so kind of halfway through January, and I don't have much planned for this week. I think it's a fairly normal week, which I am so grateful for. I don't know how obvious this has been from my videos, but I haven't been home in this house much at all. Over the last half year, there's just been lots of travelling around, lots of staying with other people, and I'm so happy to be in my own home, in my own space. I just have felt my creativity go through the roof being back in my own space and fully in control of my own time again. It's heavenly. I'm sure many of you can relate. I know there's a lot of similar home birds who watch this channel, and yeah, that feeling of being in your own house is just the best. So as you might have seen, I'm trialling a new way of reading this year and using TBR prompt cards to help me to pick the sorts of books which I think will make my reading year a really wonderful one. And I thought I would just talk you through what I'm reading at the moment. I've already read 5 books in January, which is a pretty good start to the year. I've read some really good stuff, but I think I'll just save talking about those until I do my wrap up at the end of the month, otherwise we'll be here forever. So the first thing that I'm reading is a classic, and this is The Rainbow by D.H. Lawrence. This is a family saga set in Nottinghamshire, and it looks at the way that people love. I mean, this is a central theme of Lawrence's writing in general, the way that people love, but one of the things I'm most getting out of this is the way that love and marriage and sexual connection is simultaneously the joining of two beings into one, whilst those beings also maintain their individuality and can never truly connect. If you've never read Lawrence before, I think he is definitely worth trying to see whether you like him or not. He seems to be an author who divides opinion, but I love him. I always thought I loved him, but it's been maybe 10 years or so since I last read something by him, and I'm so delighted to discover that I still really love him. He's definitely an author who I want to read all of his works over the course of my life. That was the main one, and the one that I have the most to say about. The other things I'm listening to, I've got, under the prompt of children/YA, got this book called By Ash, Oak and Thorn by Melissa Harrison, which is a middle grade book about these 3 tiny people who are kind of guardians of the landscape, and the ash tree gets blown down in a particularly strong storm, and they go on a quest to try and find some others of their kind. It's a kind of climate change book for children. So far, I think I'm about a fifth of the way through. It seems to be presenting the issues, I think, in just a really nice, child-friendly way. I think it would be a good book to have as a read aloud with your children, because there are lots of comments about things which used to be in the countryside that aren't there anymore, and sort of dangers to animals, and there's this idea that the old guardians, these magic creatures, are fading away, and that the guardianship of the planet is now in the hands of humans, but humans aren't taking that guardianship seriously. So I think there's a lot of interesting ideas in there. It feels quite middle gradey, it reads quite young, but it's sweet, it's charming, and the audiobook that I'm listening to is one of those ones that has additional sound effects, which I love, so birds and just sounds in the background, which I'm really enjoying. I'm not a huge fan of the narrator's voice, which is a shame, but the sound effects are making up for it, so that's going fine so far. I think it's going to be the best thing I've ever read, but it's a nice, sweet, easy background listen. Then another very sweet background listen, I'm listening to Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne. I've had this just recommended to me as a reread quite a lot recently, and so I thought I would listen to it, and I'm particularly listening to, I'll put it up here, this version on Audible, which has, again, sound effects and things in the background, which makes it a really sweet listen. Tom's been away this weekend, and like the adult that I am, I've been listening to it as a bedtime story as I fall asleep to stop me feeling scared. Okay, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I have been listening to it. while I've been falling asleep, and yeah, it's just really sweet, charming, funny, obviously very young. It's interesting that the stories, which in my head from when I was little were quite long stories, are actually each just a sort of 10-minute anecdotes. My favourite thing about it by far is Winnie the Pooh's hums. They're just so whimsical and adorable. And then lastly, another thing that I'm listening to is The Girl with the Pearl Earring by Tracy Chevalier. This is a historical fiction about the relationship between Vermeer and a servant in his house, who is the girl who he painted for his painting The Girl with the Pearl Earring. I am a short way through this, not very far through, and I like it so far. There's not anything massively standing out about it for me. It feels just very historical fiction-y. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. She has basically just moved into his house to start working for him, so I don't really have that much to go on with it yet. But those are the things that I'm hoping to be reading or listening to over the course of the week. Obviously, a couple of them are really short. I mean, Winnie the Pooh is like 2.5 hours long on audiobook or something, and the other children's one I should get through pretty quickly. So I will let you know as the week goes along how I'm finding them.
Ready for your walks, Fishy? You ready?
Hi there, it's Wednesday. We've just taken Fuji back to his owner, which is really sad. I'm actually really sad to see him go. That's the dog we've been looking after for probably a little bit over a week now, and he was just a ridiculously well-behaved dog. Like, he was so easy, he was no effort at all, and it was really nice having a dog in the house, so sad to see him go. Anyway, I thought I would cheer myself up by giving you an update on how my reading's going this week, because it's going really well. I'm so happy with just how my January reading has started off. I remember this also last year, actually. I had a really wonderful January. I think I always feel so much energy and enthusiasm at the beginning of the new year, particularly for reading. I don't know what it is about this month that makes it often such a good reading month for me, but this particular January I do feel the benefit of having used my TBR cards, so I'm definitely reading books that are in genres or categories that I really want to be reading, and I'm enjoying that a lot. So, book that I finished listening to Winnie the Pooh. I really enjoyed it. It was really charming and sweet. I don't have very much to say about it though. I thought I would have more thoughts about it, but it was just a really sweet, enjoyable, cozy, comforting children's book. I kind of did feel the absence of a child to share it with. I think I will bottle it up as a gorgeous, lovely children's story, and one day, if I hopefully have a child of my own to share it with, I will really delight in that process. So yeah, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something that I was wild about reading just for myself as an adult. Then the other middle grade book that I'm reading, that when I first mentioned it on Monday, I hadn't really made up my mind about how much I liked it. This is by Ash Thorn by Melissa Harrison, and the conclusion is that I am really liking it. It's like a quest journey narrative, quite a classic narrative that you get in children's literature, which I do really enjoy. I always find it really satisfying and fun to see the different adventures that happen in a quest narrative, and we have 3 of these little hidden folk who are going on a quest to try and find some others of their brethren, because they're beginning to fade, to like literally become invisible, and they don't understand why, and their home that they lived in has been destroyed. So yeah, they're on this quest, and along the way they meet many other animals. I was initially a little bit uncertain about the writing. It felt very middle grade-y. It still does, but it's middle grade writing that I like. It's got those little observations and witticisms and ways of observing emotions. Actually, something I think Harrison is really good at doing is talking about things like when the characters are upset, sometimes they're mean and they do unkind things. And she kind of picks apart and gently analyses those emotions and points out that, this character snapped because they were worried, and then eventually they'll say sorry. And it's just quite nice modelling for children of how to cope with difficult times and worries and concerns and sadness. There's a lot of that, which I think is really good. Also, I was a bit worried that the climate change message might either be something that came across as scary to young readers, or something which was just laid on a bit thick and sort of made you a bit like, ugh. But it hasn't been. It's been sprinkled in a really gentle way. Humans aren't portrayed as being deliberate destructors of the environment, but rather as not fully understanding the impact of their actions, as not being fully observant. Harrison kind of gets children on her side by talking about noticing children. If you're one of those noticing people, then you might be able to hear the dawn chorus if you get up early at 6 a.m, or you might spot that such and such is different this year. And I think had I read it as a child, that would really have worked for me. I would have loved to have seen myself as a noticing person. I would have been out looking for the hidden folk who lived in nature. I think it's just, yes, such a nice concept actually to encourage children to engage with the natural world. And fairly near the end, they have gone into the hive, which is like the city. And so they're just discovering this kind of insane world to them of everything man-made. I do tend to enjoy little people kind of stories. Like I really enjoyed the Burrowers as a concept. I think there's something so appealing to the imagination to feel like maybe there are other tiny people living in our world. So yeah, so far I'm really enjoying it. I feel like Harrison's got a really lovely concept there and she's doing some good stuff with it. Then the final book that I want to update you on, I did mention on Monday I'm also listening to The Girl with the Pearl Earring, but I haven't really made much progress on that. So the final book that I have been listening to on audiobook and also reading, so I'm kind of listening ahead on audiobook so that then when I read with my eyes it's a revisit, because I'm just getting so much out of this that coming to it a second time round, but very shortly after I've kind of already come to it a first time round, is really helping me to get even more out of it. Rainbow by D.H. Lawrence, I'm absolutely loving. Lawrence is just so perceptive of the human experience, at least the human experience in a way which is similar to the way that I feel the human experience. Something that I definitely reflect on a lot reading literature and talking to other people about it, reading other people's reviews, is how fascinating it is for me the way different authors capture the human experience in ways which elucidate it for different readers. Lawrence is an elucidating writer for me, for sure. Lawrence is writing really perceptively about the experience of childhood. He's writing in here about a young child's experience. I just wanted to share it actually. So it's talking about the relationship between this young girl and her dad. And it says, "The children played about as they would all day. Ursula was thoughtless. Why should she remember things? If across the garden she saw the hedge had budded, and if she wanted those greeny pink tiny buds for bread and cheese to play at tea party with, over she went for them. Then suddenly, perhaps the next day, her soul would almost start out of her body as her father turned on her shouting, 'Who's been trampling and dancing across where I've just sowed seed? I know it's you, nuisance. Can you find nowhere else to walk but just over my seed beds? It's just like you, that is, no heed but to follow your own greedy nose.' It had shocked him, in his intent world, to see the zigzagging lines of deep little footprints across his work. The child was infinitely more shocked. Her vulnerable little soul was flayed and trampled. Why were the footprints there? She had not wanted to make them. She stood dazzled with pain and shame and unreality." I mean, to me, wow. Just the way that Lawrence captures simultaneously the perspective and experience of the child and the perspective and experience of the father. And you understand why both of them acted the way they did. You understand why both of them feel the way they did. And my world has just expanded, I've just lived as two completely different people over the course of a paragraph. That to me is great literature. That to me is why I read. And The Rainbow is just full of writing like that. I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. So yeah, that's where we're up to with the reading. My days this week, this normal week, are mostly just spent doing work. I'm really loving my job at the moment. I'm now working from home, whereas I used to work out in school as a teacher. It's just wonderful for me. Like, my team is so lovely. My health has improved drastically from having this job, which I think is just significantly better suited to me. So yeah, I'm just kind of spending my days doing my job, spending my evenings reading and doing a fair amount of stuff for my YouTube channel as well. After Vlogmas, I kind of had a couple of these total slump weeks where I just didn't do anything. I mean, I think that's fair enough. I've literally been making a video every day for the best part of a month, but I did miss it in that time, and I'm definitely feeling back and super excited about it, really motivated. Just generally all of the good vibes of the start of a new year, I'm kind of feeling them at the moment, so that's wonderful. Hi there, it's Saturday. I thought I would quickly run you through my weekend plans. Today I actually have the day free, which is really nice, and then this evening I have Kate Howe's Kindred Spirits book club, the first one, which I'm looking forward to so much. We're going to be talking about Emily of Deep Valley, which I read at the very end of 2021 and absolutely adored, so I'm really looking forward to chatting about this book. Up until that point today, my plan is just to kind of sort stuff out. So it's midday now. I spent the morning editing and uploading a video ready for next week. What I want to do now, firstly, is just like sort out the downstairs and tidy it up, because it's got really messy with the debris of the week, as it is wont to do. While I'm doing that, I'm going to finish off listening to The Girl with the Pearl Earring by Tracy Chevalier. I only have like half an hour left to listen to. I'll tell you about it properly once I've got to the end, but not loving it so far. Certainly not loving it as much as I expected to love it. Then for this afternoon, I think I just want to do a load of Life Min. I've reached that point where I'm a bit afraid to look at my emails, just like my personal emails, because there's so much stuff in there that I know I want to act on or should have already acted on and haven't done it yet. And then Sunday tomorrow, I'm going out for brunch with some friends, and then I think also possibly going out for dinner. So a couple of social things, but nothing too taxing. It's quite a nice balance actually this weekend of a few social things, but nothing that's like consuming my whole weekend, so I still have time to do all of the weekend jobs that I want to do. And the other thing I really want to do is to spend some time reading. I've been doing fantastic this week at listening to audiobooks. I have been reading a bit in bed before I go to sleep. I actually started my reread of The Country Child, which was another one of my postcards, and I'm adoring it. So I either want to carry on reading The Rainbow or reading The Country Child. Ideally spend a few hours just sitting in this chair with a book, I've been loving reading so much this year. I know I always love reading, but I'm definitely caught up in one of those places where I just have I'm just in a really great place with it. I just can't get enough. I'm enjoying what I'm reading so much. It's such a delightful start to my reading year. And yeah, all I really want to do is read. Anyway, given that I can't read all of the time because there's other stuff to do, I'm going to go and do a job that at least allows me to listen to an audiobook. Okay, let's get cleaning. Hi there, it's Monday and I'm going to round off the vlog here with my last 2 reviews of the books that I was reading this week. So, I'll give you the bad news first and then I'll do the good news. So, I mentioned the other day I finished The Girl with the Pearl Earring by Tracy Chevalier, or I'd nearly finished it and I wasn't loving it. I did not love this book. I gave it 2.5 stars in the end, which for me is just on the negative side of okay. Like, a 3-star read is very much a book which I'll read once, I'll find the story fine, I won't necessarily regret having read it, I might have had an alright time while I was with it, but I didn't love it. And 2.5 stars obviously is just like on the underside of that. This was the fictional story of the relationship between Vermeer and a servant who he painted for the famous painting Girl with the Pearl Earring. I just didn't find it very well written, was the main problem, or the writing style didn't work for me, or something like that. There was a lot of historical detail in there, which I enjoyed. It's set in the 1660s though, which I must say, this is a big disclaimer that may well change how much you enjoy this. I just don't love that time period of history. Like, I just don't tend to really enjoy books that are set kind of Victorian time is generally where my real love and passion for historical fiction books come in. Like Victorian times, the World Wars, those sorts of historical fictions I tend to enjoy more. I don't know what it is, but just all the talk about like the dirty streets and the marketplaces and things like that, they don't really get me excited, and this had a lot of that, so if you like that kind of thing, then you might enjoy this more than I did. But I just found the characters really badly drawn. They just all felt like stock characters. I felt bad for the main character, the servant girl, and I think I particularly felt bad for her because I didn't feel like throughout the book at any point she had a friend or anyone she could turn to who she liked, and that obviously is kind of a part of the story and part of her helplessness, but also as a reader, I personally find it kind of sucks to read a book where all of the characters not only are not particularly nice people, but aren't even developed not particularly nice people. I think when you have a whole book and you just can't connect to any of the characters, or even like you don't even feel interested in any of the characters, then that's a problem. So that was a shame, but it was an audiobook, it's fairly short, and it's quite famous, so, I'm glad I've experienced it. Maybe it suffered as well, because at the same time, I was reading The Rainbow by D.H. Lawrence. Full-on 5-star read, absolutely amazing, amazing book. I adored this. When you're reading a book, this happens quite rarely for me, but there are books where I'll read a single page of it, and in my head as I'm reading, I'm just thinking, like, this book gets 5 stars for this page alone. And as is the case in many 5-star books, this had multiple repetitions of pages and sections and ideas and analyses, descriptions where I would have just given the whole book 5 stars for that section alone. This was really an epic. It's about 500 and something pages. It's not a short book, but neither is it a kind of 1,000 pages plus tome. But it really feels like an epic. It kept reminding me actually of Tolstoy throughout. I think Lawrence does successfully something that I also feel Tolstoy does successfully, which is to explore something broad, something huge, the changing brushstrokes of society, and yet to do that through the eyes of a limited number of characters, but through displaying those characters' inner thoughts and feelings and emotions and their interactions with the world. He brings us to the knowledge of something far greater that is partly societal, partly political, but also in the case of Lawrence, very, very much emotional. He portrays the experience of love over 3 generations of one family, the Brangwen family, living in Nottinghamshire. Oh, this was just amazing. I don't even really know, as is so often the case with these books, which are truly outstanding, not quite sure where to begin. I don't feel like I have the language to really portray to you how wonderful I thought this was. So we begin in about the 1860s, I think, and go up to the early-ish 1900s. And we kind of see over the course of 3 relationships from 3 kind of children growing up, we see the way that love and marriage and human connection is changing alongside the changes of society. We see the way that women within different social constraints fight for their sense of self, for their identity, for their role in the world, the way that they succeed and fail at that. We see the way that 2 different people come together in union, and union in many forms. So Lawrence does explore sexual union. This is a fascinating book. I mean, it was published in 1915. It was banned, but it has a really open exploration of the experience of a young bisexual woman. I mean, just amazing. So yeah, sexual union is one of the things that he explores, but also just the day-to-day, the raising of a family, the coming together of ideas, and there's subtleties of a relationship. There's a lot of exploration of how things like somebody's experience of religion can be jarring on the other person if their experience of religion is kind of different, even within the context of a world in which everybody goes to the same church and has heard the same preaching growing up and is coming from a very similar background and similar attitude towards religion. As you can see, it's called The Rainbow, and this is a very biblical book in terms of really drawing on the Bible. There's loads of biblical language throughout. There is this sort of symbolism of floods and the rainbow after the floods, finding salvation, finding a life which is good for you, which is right, finding what religion means for you in your life and your own relationship with religion or lack of it. It just explores so much. Like I say, it's an epic. It really feels and reads like a successful work of epic literature, exploring many, many things. The language is stunning. The characterization, maybe this is where A Girl with the Pearl Earrings suffered so much for me, because the characters, perhaps I would have found them fine if I hadn't been reading this alongside it, but these characters are more full and real and marvellous than myself, almost. Lawrence explores a lot of people in turmoil. I get the impression, like, his interests are definitely about those pivotal moments in your life emotionally, not necessarily the things that you would think of as a real pivotal moment, but, you know, like an actual wedding, perhaps, in real life, or the birth of a child. Those are the things which get classed as being the pivotal moments. But for Lawrence, a pivotal moment might actually be, you know, an experience of a conversation, or like earlier on I read that scene about young Ursula when she trod over her father's seeds. These moments in your life which become pivotal and have this huge meaning to you, even though from the outer perspective you might not notice that. Those are the things that Lawrence focuses on. Yeah, his writing is exquisite, characterization is exquisite. I can't believe how much he got into this novel. Like, it really does cover 3 generations, and at the point at which it is with each generation, you feel like you really, really know that character. And then they kind of move on up the ages. So I guess it does, not this is a criticism per se, but it definitely does focus on the coming of age period in a person's life. So teenage years and your 20s. By the time the characters get into their 30s or so, they've kind of passed up to the next generation, and although we still see them from time to time and we occasionally get an insight into what their life experience is like, we don't get that same really deep, almost sort of microscopic examination of what they're thinking and feeling and how they're living their lives once they get older. But yeah, for Lawrence to fit so much into what really feels like quite a short book, given how much he puts in here, is phenomenal. I'm also really excited. I read The Rainbow first deliberately because it's the first in a series of 2 books, the second one being Women in Love, which is one of Lawrence's more famous works, and Women in Love continues to follow Ursula, the character who we kind of leave off this book with. I think she's about 18 as we leave her off, and her sister, and it carries on looking at their experiences of love as they continue to grow up. I think I'm probably going to spend the next week or so just going back over and rereading bits because I was so impressed by this. I found it so beautiful, so thought-provoking. It's not a really easy read, but neither is it that difficult. Like, I didn't find it hard to follow the plot or work out what was going on or access any of the characters. It was a luxurious read in terms of the level of description and insight and depth throughout was always tangible. And yeah, that's one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much, but also a reason that I kind of want to spend a bit more time just rereading bits of it and thinking about it and enjoying what a rich and fabulous experience this read was. So that was a wonderful way to finish off my reading week. I really enjoyed reading The Rainbow as part of a reading vlog and having that little extra push of encouragement to try and get it finished because I was enjoying it so much. Yeah, those are the things which I finished off reading. I'm going to ink them in on my TBR postcards now. I'm so happy thus far with how my TBR postcard prompt thing is going. I just feel like I'm having the most magnificent reading month and I'm over the moon with it. I say I'm having the most magnificent reading month. Obviously, not everything is perfect, but things like The Girl with the Pearl Earring were books that I did want to read. Sometimes you don't always love a book, even though you come to it expecting that you're going to. That is just life. The Rainbow more than makes up for it. I hope that you're doing ever so well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye bye.